I don't know about AI. You actually do. And you can start to engage in it on a very, very basic level. But I think the most important thing as that happens is to start giving yourself the grace to experiment with it, to just play with it. Play with it as if there's no expectation or grading system that's attached to it. Just get in there and start asking questions and exploring it.
AI isn't the future, it's now. And whether you're in HR, sales, operations, or leadership, the choices you make today will determine whether you thrive or get left behind. Welcome to AI, Voice or Victim. I'm Greg Boone, Marketing Executive and AI Serious.
And I'm Erica Rooney, author, speaker, and gender equality advocate, and I'm AI Curious. And we are here to cut through the noise and show you how to leverage AI in your career, your business, and your brand. In every episode, we will break down real-world use cases and give you AI-driven strategies that you can apply immediately. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? Let's jump in. Today's guest is Loren Greiff, a career strategist who helps leaders land their next opportunity faster and earn more, turning decades of insight into their next powerful chapter. Today, we are decoding overqualified, and we're diving into the latest AI strategies for the job seekers on the other side of 40. Loren, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Super excited, and congratulations to the both of you for getting this thing going. And I love the title of your podcast.
Oh my gosh. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be all the things.
It's going to be a wild ride, y'all.
All right.
But Loren, let's dive in. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Loren Greiff, and I am the founder of the executive career consultancy called Portfolio Rocket. And we help executives over 40 land faster and earn more. And why I feel so excited about this conversation is because I like to raise my hand and say, hey, I'm a student of the market. And the market, the hiring market, the world of work is so complex. Some people will say there's 5 generations in the workforce. Other people might say there's 6 generations. But as we all know, nobody is retiring at the earlier edge of 50s, 60s in this day and age, unless they either have something else, they've made enough money to kind of live their other life. But in many, many, many cases, so many people are just like, I want to still make a difference. I want to impact my industry. I want to feel like my days have that same level of excitement and interactions, and I'm really, really able to drive some kind of larger change. And so I really want to applaud the fact that you're talking about AI, and you're also talking about it not just for this younger audience, you're talking about it for the fact that this is not just a trendy, it's going to go in and it's going to go out. This is as big as anything else. And you all know, right? CEOs, changes to industries, everything is moving in the AI direction. So if you can't beat them, join them.
I don't think people recognize how much it is changing the world. And Greg, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, let me take a step back. So, a few people have educated me the different generations. I didn't even realize that there was 5 generations in the workplace. Then you just said 6, right? In my mind, if you listen to all of the news for the last 10 years, it was millennials and then everyone else. And so thank you for adding a little bit more color to the problem set there. But I think that when I think about AI, and let me just take a step back to AI voice or victim, right? Part of what we want to do is for everyone of all ages. But, this particular episode, for sure, we're talking about the folks that, like myself, right? This resonated with me. I'm over 40. We don't have to get into how much over 40, but I am certainly over 40, right? But for folks to understand how they can stay relevant and use these different tools. But when you think about AI and what it can do, right? I tell people all the time, if you really start to embrace this technology, you flip that time equation. you start being able to do a lot more things that you actually want to do with your life, right? So maybe I don't have to retire at 60 or 65 or 70. Hell, maybe I never retire because I'm going to be able to use these tools and techniques to really flip that equation and spend more time doing the things that I want. So as we dive in and have more conversations about it, I want to talk about some practical tools and ways that you can actually use this. And especially as it relates to your guide and how you're helping people. I loved how you're changing the narratives. I'm going to add a little flavor of AI on top of that to see how we can maybe automate or help advance some of these things that you're talking about. But in general, I want people to embrace this. Because one key word, I listened to several of your podcasts now, and you talk about relevance and revealing, right? And one of the things you talk about is AI will reveal you. So I'm excited to hear more about what you mean by that and then how that can translate into growing your career.
100%. I'm going to take the bait on that one.
Uh-oh.
I really am, because in this time frame, it's natural, right? What's natural is we think, ooh, AI is coming to get me. You know, it's going to take my job away. It's going to like make all this work that I've been doing, you know, it's going to threaten my career. It's going to threaten my position. And, you know, we are seeing this. It's not a fallacy, right? We're seeing over and over and over again, big bellwether companies like the Metas and the Amazons and all these people that are, you know, there are jobs, there's consequences to this. And so how do you reconcile between the facts, right? We're seeing more and more and more layoffs, and that's not changing anytime soon. And also the fact that we are working longer. We want to be able to be more relevant. So where do those things coexist? And the way that I have really been able to more or less see the overlap and see the opportunity, because I think it's very important. Those things are true, but so are the following. AI is not here to replace you. It's here to reveal you. And what that really is all about is that, as you alluded to, there are redundant tasks that we want AI to take them off our shoulders, take them out of our lives, make our lives focused on the things that AI cannot replace. Make them focused on, yes, you do these kind of like boring, you know, repetitive tasks so that I can really tap into what I have learned are called the 5 C's. So the 5 C's were coined by the chief economic officer over at LinkedIn, and he describes them like this. And I think that they are not only easy and practical to remember, but also so reassuring. So the first one is collaboration. AI cannot replace collaboration. Curiosity, creativity, communication. I know that's a big one for you, Erica. And
we're just going to call it caring.
It is caring.
Fair enough.
It is caring. Compassion. And so how does that really show up in your career, right? Because these things sound like they're table stakes. Oh, are you collaborative? Sure, I'm collaborative. You know, how are you communicative? Everybody's communicative. And so now we have an opportunity, because all this other nonsense is kind of being offloaded onto AI. Now we can deepen down. Now we can really understand, what does something like communication mean? And for the folks who are over 40, I'm going to really synthesize this into hopefully a very communicative way, is being able to communicate to larger audiences with less time and less words. So as you move into the C-suite, you are not there for an hour, 45 minutes giving direction. You need to be able to reach more people in less time with fewer words, which means you really need to be clear and precise, no filler words. And that direction needs to be able to persuade and influence a larger audience of people. So that may require a lot of skill in being able to learn things like I just did, which is the pause, may be able to be very important to know when to ask the right questions. It's something that we also focus in on in our consultancy. What's the difference between a 100, 200, and 300 level question? What are the questions that really identify the root issue versus the nice to have, like in a 100 level question? So being able to really take that generic term of communication and really getting to the underbelly of it and understand, okay, what do I need to do at this stage in my life that's going to signal where the value is, and also be able to secure the idea that this is a skill and this is an inherent value in what I bring to the party, whether it's, in the C-suite or in a senior level role, regardless of industry. So I really want to emphasize that it is not a threat, and you still need to learn it. Doesn't mean that just because you have the 5 C's, it's like, okay, well, that's not important, because it still is. And every industry is being augmented and changed as a result of AI.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, thank you for that. I think I always try to tell any team members or any, organizations I'm consulting with, I say, look, you use AI to move from the mundane tasks to the mind-blowing creative, right? Stop doing the repetitive things that people don't want to do anyway, right? And again, it's all about that time equation. If more people thought about it through that lens, I like to tell folks, it's like, stop calling it artificial intelligence, just call it augmented intelligence, right? It's really to help you advance yourself, advance your career. I was always taught to speak and to work in headlines, right? To your point, to communicate in headlines. And what people don't take a real advantage of is you can use these large language models like a Claude or even a ChatGPT and say, boil down the long form of things that you do and then synthesize it into the bullets or the headlines that make the most sense. And what I would imagine that over time, because I already do this with my own team, is I say, look, if you send me a long email, you should just assume one of two things happens. One, I'm either not going to read it, or two, I'm going to send it through a large language model to distill what are the key points in it. Because we are being inundated with so many different things every single day, right? And so the way that you're communicating out and the way that you're consuming information, leverage these tools, right? So you can be a much better speaker. You can be a much better writer if you leverage AI to be a support mechanism. If you're going to go about it and say, I just need to work on my craft for the next 2 years, you may have missed a boat, right? The whole reason of this show and this episode here is to help these folks that already have great wisdom, skill set, experience, et cetera. As I tell people all the time, when I use AI, I feel like Thor with his hammer or Captain America with his shield. At our experience level, there's so much more that we can do. And it doesn't matter if you're in HR, sales, operations, marketing, leadership. It's not just for the technical folks. The folks that have something to give at this level, that have deep experience in their craft, can do wonders if they just lean in a little bit more.
Now, I want to say one thing, though, because while I love all of that, right, this is where the chief people officer in me comes out. And I'm going, this man has taken my heartfelt email and plugging it in to get 2 very impersonal bullets about what I need. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, right? Because when you are busy and if you have 27 emails, you can't sit there and try to decipher how many exclamation points I'm talking about here, okay? But use it as the tool, right?
Yep.
If he is in this situation where he's got to make a decision quick, that's a great solution, right? But you may want to save that email, go back to it and look through the layers to find the human element, right? The sea of curiosity, and make sure you're plugging that in. But again, augmented intelligence is what we're talking about here.
100%. And sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but it's also about, I use it to prioritize to that point. The thing that AI is really good at, especially the large language models, is distilling the sentiment. Right. Mm-hmm. Understanding, sometimes things get lost in translation. We're looking through it quickly. We didn't realize how important that email was. Right. Mm-hmm. So even if you read it all, you didn't really understand the underlying sense of what someone was trying to say or trying to communicate again. So I will use it and it'll say, hey, I assume that it talks to me like this and points at me. So it says, hey, Greg, you need to pay attention to this one. I'm like, oh, Erica just sent me this. And I can tell she's very heated at me right now. I need to go respond quickly.
I love that.
When we are using AI and we are upskilling and helping our clients now, it's not like we're just teaching them AI, but as part of the requirements to be a in the job market right now, and also to make sure that people are relevant. We want to prepare them in terms of understanding what questions are probably going to show up regarding AI. The number one question last year in 2024 is, how are you integrating AI into your organization? And what changes will you make in 2025 as a result of AI? So you can expect that that's going to show up. So we want to make sure that they have clear mastery over how it's impacting them and how it will impact that respective company or their industry. But also little things that I think are so important and so underrated. Any of those generic headlines, like you mentioned headlines, in emails, follow up, just following up, goodbye. Goodbye. Have AI come up with a glossary of different headlines that you can use. Also, write these emails, not necessarily cut and paste, but to be able to put them into the audience that you are serving, right? This should not be about what I want, what I want, what I want. It's certainly no demand. So understanding, and you can prompt that, right? For busy CEO who needs a skimmable, to your point, right? Who needs a skimmable email. All of those posts should be under 500 characters if you're writing a post on LinkedIn. All of those things can be done. You're not going to sit there counting the words, but this is also make this optimized for maximum engagement. Make this, in the voice of so-and-so and so-and-so who is an industry leader. I mean, all of those things are tips and tricks that are so at the ready and also can give you that leverage. I want to just also kind of throw in a little bit of a word of caution here, and I'm going to say this heavy-handed. Please do not use AI exclusively for your resumes. I will tell you this from the bottom of my heart. As much as I love AI and all it is doing, you are at risk if you overuse it to becoming a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. You are not the first person that has thought about maximizing keywords and stuffing it into your resume or your LinkedIn. That stuff is like you could smell it a mile away. So if you are looking to have a quality outcome, you have to actually incorporate your own intel into this. So I love what you said, Erica. It's a tool. It's not the prize. You're the prize, and you are driving how that tool gets worked, how it gets used. So I know it's a natural thing to think, oh, I have this new toy and it can do all these things and it's amazing and soup to nuts. But all of those things it's not a one size fits all. And you have to be very, very careful because the tendency is to be able to cut those corners, but sometimes also to cut off the opportunity in the process. So
you bring up a very funny topic to me because I was talking to some folks recently about this. And so Anthropic, the folks that brought us all Claude, which is a large language model, actually said not to use AI for any of its applicants for their resumes, but people thought that was very rich. You created this thing that you don't want us to use to find a job at your company. So it is a real thing. I would say that the thing that I do think is very useful in the process, right? I always define AI in the sense of it's not necessarily replacing you, but it's certainly going to replace certain processes and it's going to automate workflows. Is one of the things I was thinking about coming in is the idea of you could use it to really enhance a resume. You could enhance a profile. You could start to understand sentiment, what you described earlier when you said in the voice of this, it's a persona pattern that you're using in a prompt from a prompt engineering perspective for any prompt engineers that may be listening, right? The advancements of the persona pattern of saying, hey, I am a HR professional looking for X, Y, and Z, take the role of a hiring manager, give me the top 3 X, Y, and Z that I should be doing and talking about in my profile, in my interview. There's so many different use cases and things that hopefully by the end of this episode, we'll talk about like how can we actually automate some of these things so that you can have a broader scale for the folks that you are servicing, because a lot more people need to hear the great work and the things that you're doing. And I think that AI could actually help scale that as well.
100%. Is that where you want me to go?
No, Erica, what's your thoughts? Look, she's an HR professional, right? That's why I love having her here.
Listen, in HR, we listen a lot and we silently judge, but we don't publicly judge. But I love that we're talking about how everyone can continue to use this, right? But I do want to just really quickly talk about the fear that people have around AI right now, because right now we're seeing a lot of the basic tech jobs dry up. We're seeing a lot of those jobs being replaced by AI. And so those people, of course, immediately get fearful. And whenever I hear of that, I always go all the way back in time to the invention of the car, right? That replaced horse-drawn carriages, okay? Nobody is saying that's a bad thing these days. And yes, jobs are now eliminated and they're changed and they're different. But that opens up so many other jobs, tying very much into what you speak about, which is staying relevant. And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, and especially since we're talking about this 40 and up crowd, how can we stay relevant when it comes to AI, because it is so fast changing?
So, I mean, there's literally endless opportunities to incorporate this. And I really want to address this 40 and older crowd because the anxiety comes up, right? And so heads up, you do not need to be Sam Altman or any of these other experts in this area. The fact that you are engaging in it automatically puts you over into a relevant category. So the barriers are very low. You do not need to be, prompt engineering or anything like that. So let's just take some of that enticement to say, well, I don't know about AI. You actually do. And you can start to engage in it on a very, very basic level. But I think the most important thing as that happens is to start giving yourself the grace to experiment with it, to just play with it. Play with it as if there's no expectation or grading system that's attached to it. Just get in there and start asking questions and exploring it. So many people, I don't know if you know Connor Grennan, who is over at NYU. He's like big into, helping people embrace AI. He'll say, this is not a bolt-on. This is a through line. This is working through every single part of our lives. Some people are using it for recipe development. Some people are using it to help schedule their kids' soccer games. So it doesn't have to necessarily be work specific. So as you are, entering or ramping onto that AI bus, so to speak, start playing with it so that you can give yourself some fun in the process and start exploring with the little things that it can do for you to make the stakes very low.
100%. I think, that's some great sound advice. If folks need to start experimenting, I love the idea of the recipes, right? There are things like people don't realize like, hey, I only have a can of soup and I have this and I have that thing. What can I make, right? And it'll give you such amazing ideas that you would have never come up on your own. And it would have taken you, hours to do all the research yourself and then only to come out with something that was kind of, sorry, the pun, but half-baked, right? At that point. But if you think about, how you're using these things on a day-to-day basis and the relevance and the reason why you need to do it, right? It takes me back to, I used to interview folks all the time and I would ask him, what are the extracurriculars that you do outside of, you keep telling me about your work experience. Interesting, right? A lot of people have very similar backgrounds. I want to know you, because part of business, people like to work with people they like to work with and people that are going to advance their careers, right? And so when I think about now and relevance, I was listening to a podcast coming in and they were saying in the future, it's going to be more likely than not that people are going to be judging candidates based on what AI tools they use in their workflow, right? Mm-hmm. People have this fear that, hey, if I'm using this, I'm going to be cheating. But what they're not understanding is the expectation is that you're using it. And they want to know how do you showcase that you're using it, right? And so that's going to be a requirement going forward. And people are going to say, okay, interesting. What AI tools are you using to advance your workflow? Because what they're not going to want to hire are folks that are still doing it the slow, old way.
Right. I mean, it only makes sense, right? How are you giving me more with less, right? I mean, what employer is looking for you to just, lollygag around and get things and have slow, execution of whatever needs to be shipped? So, I mean, I think that there is always going to be that understanding you have to use it in your workflow and you have to use it in all the other, C areas that I talked about. But I really want to just say that as it relates to this audience who may have some apprehension, natural apprehension, and I love the example that you used with, the horse and buggy. This also happened with e-commerce. Yep. When we all thought, oh no, there's the death of brick and mortars, what is going on? It did not cannibalize. It expanded. And it happened also, back in the day with other advents. You don't see anybody carting around a landline. All of these things have to some degree evolved and changed the way that we work. And that's what's happening now. And, I think the longer you resist it, what's going to happen? The more you persist. And you are at anybody who's listening, we're all beginners. Yes. We're all beginners. Nobody is at the place where they're SMEs in this area. Sure, some people are, more interested in adopting it. And I certainly know tons of people that are like you, that are on a much more rapid digestion process and adoption process. But you don't need to be at that level to be successful with using it.
Here's what I love about what you just said, and that's that everybody is figuring it out right now. And they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. So if you are fearing it, if you are struggling with it, just start, right? Start with ChatGPT. And people ask me all the time, like, Erica, how do you get all of this stuff done? And it's because I rely on ChatGPT for so many of the basic things that took up so much of my mental energy. And so when you're talking about the mental energy of the working mom, y'all, we don't have time to waste.
Totally.
And so when I'm sitting there doing the simple things like planning out my meals, I will ask them for a variety of foods instead of sitting there flipping through recipe books, scrolling, texting back and forth with my husband. Does this sound good? No. So you really expand time. But since we're really talking about decoding overqualified, and we have our professional career strategist here.
I've been waiting for this one.
Yes, I really want to talk about the whole recruitment cycle with it, because AI is rapidly changing how people are brought into companies, right? It's changing in the ATS systems. It's changing in the interviews. So talk to me a bit, Loren, about what are some of the changes that you're seeing, because I want the audience to be aware. They might not even be aware, right? These might be some people who've been in 20-year careers.
Oh, and those are my people. So in our consultancy, we work with a lot of folks. I'm guessing anywhere between 75 to 80% of our clients have been out of the marketplace for double digits for at least 10 years. And now they're coming back and they're like, whoa.
Everything's different.
Whoa, what is going on? This is not the same. And so in order to bring them up to a level of market relevance and to be able to stay as a competitive candidate, we need to address this buzzword of overqualified, because it's bound to happen. It's gonna happen. And so we want to get ahead of it before you find out, the reason why my search isn't going anywhere is because, I've got this scarlet O on my chest going, I'm overqualified. So overqualified means a lot of things. The first one is that you're undervaluing yourself. So if it's an easy platitude, it's an easy rejection, it's easy because anybody can figure out the dates. You don't have to worry right now. We're not going to talk about, should I leave the dates on? Should I not leave the dates on? It's pretty much like we can all talk about decoding. We can figure that out real fast too. So once they see that, and if they see that without having the value, it will be the default, right? It's too easy. Oh, you're overqualified, right? And you hear that all the time. The other question is, underneath overqualified, is we think you're too expensive.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Right? We think
That's the one I wanted to get to.
We think you're too expensive. I'll break into that one in a minute. The other one is also a real slight, which is we don't think you're technologically savvy enough. Right? You're overqualified. But what they're really saying is, and by the way, you can't keep up with us. The other one is you don't know how to talk to the multiple, strata of different people in the company. It's another way of saying you're outdated, right? Overqualified is kind of like that that easy way of glossing over the fact that you don't demonstrate that you've worked with people who are at different generations. And then the last area of overqualified is we think you're a flight risk. You won't be happy here. You're just staying here until you ride out into the sunset, and you're not going to be able to stay with us, and we're not going to make an investment because in our perception, you're ready to clock out. And so you have to know that while they're using this, it goes deeper. And so part of this process, with the help of AI and with knowing where these euphemisms are being mis-euphemized, is to be able to get ahead of that, which in a job search or just in any place that you are in your career, you must be including AI in any of your materials. So if you are on LinkedIn, for example, you want to be able to use even AI to do some research on how AI is changing your company and maybe post about that. That seems like a really easy and prudent way to approach it, right? Get ahead of it. Don't let them think that when you don't need them to. So be proactive about that. Use AI to also be able to, and I said this before, make sure that your communication is stealth. You want to be able to think the way that they do. To your point, they don't want to see a long email that will tell them right away that you didn't use AI. You don't have to write, a cookie cutter, but at least you're considering where they're coming from. Use AI for your research. Research your companies. Have them troubleshoot it. Have them do performers. Have them understand and tell them what you heard in the last, earnings call. Use it to SWOT and be your research assistant. My gosh. Think of the information. Use it to find other thought leaders that you can reach out to. Who are the top 10, 15 people in this industry who are, the people on the cusp of X? Use it for everything that you don't have time to use, and use it so that you are empowered. That's the best part here, is as you are dealing with maybe the fear of being overqualified, I want you to swap it out for things that are empowering you in the search. I don't want you to sit in the victim place. Right. I want you to turn that around and ask yourself, how can I use this to make me, smarter about my interviewing style, the questions that I can anticipate, the changes that are happening in the organization or that respective company. Have them help you with metrics. How would you turn this into a metric? How would you turn this into a transformation? How would you turn this into a future-focused story so that my experience doesn't sound dated? So have them do that heavy lifting for you so that you present yourself not as somebody who is X years old, but somebody who is really, really there to take your value so it drives theirs.
That's such a critical point, right? I'm in marketing consulting, right? And the idea is that AI is going to finally get us to this holy grail of hyper-personalization, right? And that's more on, buyers and folks that are consuming your product. But if you flip this into kind of the recruiting journey or the job search journey, like to quantify this for folks, what you're describing now, the research, the consulting angle of understanding the business, that can happen in minutes now, right? I think people need to really understand and quantify what we're talking about. We talk about that time equation. Something that will have taken you 2 days to research one company, right? You can do literally in minutes to get all the information at your fingertips. And that a person that's, that has deep expertise and experience and understands their craft, right? Having that empowerment within minutes, you can do wonders for you to do your research and to really personalize every single resume to wherever you're sending it to, every contact, communication, hyper-personalized job seeking. People need to understand and embrace these and think much differently about these tools. Again, it's not, well, I don't care if you call it a cheat code. It's really about education. It's really about coming up to speed, knowing the person that you're talking to more deeply than you ever been able to.
And that, I'm so glad that you said that, because as we were talking, I was thinking, oh, I need to share this tip, because so much of what is happening, especially at the over 40 age, is we've been told to network. Network, you're not going to get anywhere if you don't network. Please, before you go on to any networking coffee, right, ask Chat, Claude, Perplexity, I don't care who it is, to give you a full background on this person. Know where they went to school, include their favorite quotes. What do they like to do? I know you're about movies and pajamas, right? Like that's a common connection that we have. And I'm sure that we could talk about that all day, because I actually forgot my pajamas when I came here, and I was like, seriously, I had to wear my husband's. But those little things, say to that other person that you took the time to show them you know them. And there is nothing more powerful than somebody feeling seen and heard, that you could have AI help you to distill down. And that's winning. That's winning. That's better than just shooting the shit while you're having coffee and walking out of there with no traction or referral.
And so this is interesting, right? Because it just popped into my head, and I'm flipping back and forth between my notebook, another C, which is connection, which is not one of the 5 C's, but that is not something that AI is going to be able to replace, right? Those human emotions and the bonds and the feelings of belonging are all things that are only felt by humans, and not AI chatbots or any of that. But you can use those chatbots to enhance that experience, cut through the fluff, right? Cut through the crap, all that small talk that doesn't matter, and get to the meat and get that connection.
100%.
One of the tricks that I do, so I'm going to expose myself a little bit here, is that, AI is not like using Chat or Claude or Perplexity or any of those, Gemini, whichever one you choose, we have a large language model. It's not the same as just doing a basic search in pre kind of Google's change from last year. We can talk about that at another time. It's more conversational in nature. So one of the things that I do is I do this persona pattern, and I do this role playing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll use the large language model and say, you're the hiring person, or, for this 100%. Example. And then I go back and forth, and I put certain biases in there to say, how would I combat if they say X, right? Mm-hmm. How should I respond? And give me 3 ideas of what I should respond with, right? We'll talk a little bit later, maybe offline, or maybe the end of this, because I might get AI serious and put my shades on in a second here. But we could talk about how can we actually automate those things? How can we create that at scale for your clients, for other clients? Because I think consulting, you're going to see a lot more that's happening from a consulting perspective. I was reading this funny LinkedIn post this morning where someone, I guess it's funny to me, but basically what they described is that Accenture did something like 1.2 billion. I don't know if that was over the year, quarter, I don't know. But they basically, what they came out, they said, so 69,000 people at Accenture was actually doing AI consulting. That means that companies were leveraging 69 people that didn't actually know AI, because we're all in the early days, right? So no one is an expert. I'm a little bit further along, but my journey started 2 years ago, right? But I'm still not, there's no 20-year expert,
right?
Or there's this many, like just above zero, right? So the point of it is, going back to something you said earlier, start now. Like, you can't go back in time, so at least just start now. But there's so many different ways that you can prepare yourself that are outside of, what is the weather outside? That is not how you're supposed to use these models to really help you get ahead.
One thing I do want to explore, it's something I know we're all very passionate about, and we've talked a little bit about the caution that we need to use with AI. There's a lot of concerns when it comes to the voice that AI puts out, and that it is not a diverse lens, right? So if you are a minority candidate, right, what do you need to take into consideration when you're using these tools?
So there's a lot of caution around what AI can do and what AI can do, ethics, areas of biases. I mean, all of this is also, we can customize AI to some degree, right? It could be gender neutral. It could be, we're in a stage right now where there's so many, such a high confluence of so many different areas in DEI, in what is happening with government employees. All of these things are converging at the exact same time. And how I would handle this, I am not a diverse candidate, aside from the fact that I'm a woman. But if I was, I would make sure that I was customizing that to make sure. And I would also, first and foremost, I would want to really understand where that company was on their DE&I commitments first. If you're applying to a company that doesn't have a commitment to DE&I, that's also a red flag. You should know that up front. And then I would make sure that you also tailor that language depending on which way you want to go in order to be able to better access some of the core values that the company is talking about, right? Use those core values, the ones that they put on the wall or in their publication. Think about what those are and how they might matter and how you can weave them into your correspondence. And that's both written and verbal. And also, if you are not aligned on that DE&I front, please just stay away and just don't even go there. I mean, because you're not going to be able to change that. You have to know up front.
And I want to jump in and say, like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I have no idea how to even prompt it or what to say, what to do, guess what? You can ask. Mm-hmm. You can ask them, what do you need from me? And so if you feel like I don't know where to start with a question.
I think that's true. And I was also sharing with Greg, there are free, amazing classes on LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning is, I mean, you do have to be a premium member, but let me just tell you, it is so good. Udemy, all of these things, you have no excuse because there is so much that is available. YouTube, I mean, I've done everything on learned everything on YouTube. And so don't let that be a hindrance. Don't let that put you in a one down position, like a victim mentality going, well, I don't know how to start. I mean, 101s for days. So, just find one. Find one.
I mean, and to that point, that's how I, have really advanced over the last 6 to 9 months is using some of those free tools that are out there. But I also did the thing that Erica said, which is I asked the large language model itself.
Right.
Hey, it is very contextual and conversational in nature, right? So you just talk to it. You don't have to be an expert, you have to be a little bit more vulnerable, right? But just ask the questions, right? You can literally, one of the things I do is I'll write a very long-winded prompt. I just ask it to do a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of it, I just say, hey, now help me write a better prompt for that same thing I just said. Mm-hmm. That was 2 paragraphs long, right? Help me refine this. What people need to just understand, just start playing around. You'll learn pretty quickly. There's a lot that you can do. And it boils down things into sentiment, right? So even if you feel like, well, that was a dumb question, it starts to understand you. It starts to understand what you're actually trying to get at, and it'll distill that and then respond in kind, right? So I think that there's a lot that you can get out of it, but just start asking things. Just start asking it to do things. You could find that it will create a study guide for you. You say, hey, I want a study guide on this thing. A lot of the things that I'm using it for, again, are about hyper-personalization, right? When I'm going into a conversation, and this will kind of play into the bias piece that's inside of AI, I use it for a lot of image generation for things. And I will say, look, I want something that's more representative of the person that I'm going to be talking to, right? So I want an image of a woman or an image of someone. And I found that when we talk about bias, a few times I kept saying, hey, generate an image of an executive, a confident executive. Well, you want to know what happened 9 out of 10 times?
Old, pale, stale, white male.
That was 100% what would come back. I had to start to force it. Give me a senior female executive that looks like X.
Right.
To force it to do the thing. Now, it's trained on the entire internet, right? Exactly. It's not saying that the machine is quote unquote biased. It's just revealing, using one of your words, society as a whole.
It sure is. It sure is. And that's where we all have to play a part in it. We're not just going to take these things out of the box.
100%.
Yeah.
What I find interesting too, and maybe you can speak to this with your experience, is people are actually using it to be a coach nowadays. Is that what you're seeing?
I'm not seeing it that much, but I'm also not surprised at all, right? Because we can use this to get professional POVs on just about anything. Now, you want to still be able to discern, okay, just because it says this, remember, it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. So a lot of what might not be showing up is how that relates to you. Are you putting in, all of your sticky floors and your fears and what you need to overcome? Are you addressing, things that are happening in real life on the fly that you might not be able to handle? So, there are easily going to be so many applications for it, and some people will and some people won't. Like if I have a pressing issue, I'm still not going to have WebMD diagnosis. Right? Like after a little while, I'm going to be like, oh boy, well, this is what it says on WebMD, but this is getting serious now. I'm going to go to a real doctor.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I have used it a little bit to get me a little bit further along, the medical journey. But I understand and get your point there. I was going to call out that what I'm seeing in the over 40 kind of demographic, especially with folks with deep expertise on a certain domain or industry. I know about 24 folks in my own network now that are consultants. They've turned to this entrepreneurial spirit. And I ask them, I say, hey, I'm seeing this uptick of one-person consultancies that are formed. I'm helping 3 right now, right? And I said, what is that about? And they say, well, I found that with these tools, with AI and these other things, I can finally do the thing that I was passionate about, but I couldn't really afford to hire 3 assistants and all of this other stuff. I couldn't figure out how to do X, Y, and Z. But now with this, basically, they use AI as a personal assistant now, a thought partner. I always tell folks, I use it for ideation. Sometimes I forget, and I'll tell a story like, oh yeah, yesterday I was talking to somebody, then they come to realize like I was talking to myself doing a role-playing exercise through a large language model. Right.
That's hilarious.
Good. I know.
Maybe a little embarrassing for you, but that's
a lot
okay.
embarrassing.
I love that.
But this is what it's about, right? We're being open in how we use it.
Oh my God, totally.
One of the coolest things I used it for was when I wrote my book. I said, write me a 1-star review on Amazon for this book, and then write me a 5-star review. And it helped me identify what were the things that would make this book really great, and then what would be the things that I should watch out for. So it's really, this is what you need to remember. It's only as good as the information that you give it, and the success you will have is only going to be as good if you continue to hype in on those 5 C's that you talked about: having the curiosity, collaborating, connecting, compassion. All of that is so important. Loren, what's your favorite AI prompt?
Oh my God.
If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one, my favorite AI prompt would be, I do this a lot with my posts. Make this post highly opinionated and in your face.
Because that's you, and I love it.
And yeah, so I might write with some level of, talk about a sticky floor. I might write like I'm afraid to really say it out loud. So I'll have AI help turn the volume up on that. Make it more opinionated and harder hitting.
I love that.
Sorry, I had to put the shades on. Things just got real AI serious for me. So am I going to get the question next?
Yeah, what's your favorite prompt?
Ooh, my favorite prompt? I got a lot of prompts.
You can only pick one. It's your do or die.
I'll tell you what the most fun thing that I did with AI, and I tell people this all the time, is like, in under 10 minutes, I was able to create this coloring book application for my kids, right? Under 10 minutes. And it was my favorite thing to do because at first I was like, all right, I'm just doing this. I was taking some course on prompt engineering. They're like, come up with something that you want to do, whatever. And I was like, no, let me just do this. It was like getting near bedtime for the kids. I was like, let me see how quickly I can do something. We do what we call our activities before bedtime, right? It's whether reading a book or coloring. And I was like, thinking about relevance, thinking about preparing for the future. I was like, I need to start to get my kids to embrace this. How can I get them to embrace this? And I was like, let me just make a little coloring book. So now, right before my oldest, she'll be 8 in the end of May, she'll sit in my lap. We'll take a look at this. I created this very quick prompt, and she'll go through it. She can read now, right? But also if you could turn on the audio and she could talk to it, that kind of weirded her out. So we went back to the text. But she can choose between fantasy, and she can choose backgrounds and this and that. And it's asked 5 questions, right? And she goes through it and goes and communicating with, I think she calls it Maggie is the name she gave the AI. But then you get to the end of it and she prints out, we go color together. But to see her face at the end of all of that, right? To see how excited she was because she felt like she did something major, and which she did, but we did it together. So I give that to everyone because it's not just about what I do professionally, right? My favorite professional prompts are more business oriented, right? Gap analysis, understanding, this company or that, where are they popping up in the news, what opportunities are out there, where are the layoffs happening, what signals to look for. There's just a lot of different things that I use it for in general. But on a personal level, to be able to see my daughter smile and feel that, I was like, all right, I think we're going to be okay.
Well, I'll tell you mine.
Please.
And mine's in the professional lens, right? And this is my chief people officer lens coming back on. We are human. We have emotions, and we are usually tired of your shit, right? Mm-hmm. But I can't put that in an email. That's not professional. So I will write out what I feel, and then I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll say, please make this better and more professional. And then I tell you, every time she spits out the perfect response, it is the perfect response every single time. But it saves me so much time because before I used to have to write that email. I'd have to send it to a colleague to say, check me on this. And they'd be like, okay, no, you got to take out those 3 lines, Erica. That's too much.
And then I run it through my customized GPT to say, what did Erica really mean?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now I'm going to get in trouble, right? Now this is going to get me in trouble.
Now it decodes Erica.
It's going to decode me. But it cuts down on that time, right? Think about how much time you were so mad you have to walk away before you can respond. But what about when the stakes are high and timing is tight?
That's
right?
Exactly right.
Now I can throw it all into ChatGPT. I can get a professional response and I can fire it back without having that delay. So it's impressive what you can do if you just open up one of those C's, the curiosity lens, and get really curious, right? Totally. Are you using it in the job search? Are you using it with your kids? Are you using it at home? Mm-hmm. And so I think when we talk about, decoding this overqualified, that's huge. And if you don't want to be seen as overqualified or outdated or too expensive, you've got to get on the AI train. Just dip your toe in. Just dip your toe in right now. And that's all you have to do because we are all still learning.
We're all still learning. Yeah. And for anybody that also has any questions, I will share a couple of names with you of people that I reach out to on LinkedIn. Lori Mazer runs AI boot camps, and they're incredible. Connor Grennan, who I mentioned before from NYU, also just great resources. There are so many of them, and sometimes, and I'm sure that we all feel like this, there's one at every corner. And so I always like to provide my clients with the ones that I've curated, and those are my top 2. And I know that Lori in particular is very sensitive to AI ethics and compliance guidelines.
Amazing. Incredible resources. Everybody can check them out, follow them. Loren, if somebody wants to learn more about you, they want to hang out with you, where do they do it?
I would love that. They can find me on a couple of different places. My second home, which is LinkedIn. So Loren Greiff, and you can find me there. You can find me on my podcast called Career Blast and a Half, which we're so excited that you got to be a guest on, Erica. And then the last place is at portfoliorocket.com.
Incredible. Greg, any other questions for our expert here?
The question I want to end every episode with is this, right? If you could do anything in the next 24 hours related to AI to come up to speed, what would you advise someone in the next 24 hours? And it's very intentional about 24 hours. The speed at which we're moving, I want to make sure people understand. You don't have 30 days. You don't have 3 months. It is going to be measured in hours, in days.
And is this somebody who's 40 in their job search, or just anybody?
Anyone in general. I want the audience to get a lot more comfortable with AI because it's not going away.
Sure. The first thing that I would have anybody do on AI is find a way to customize that. It's not difficult, but to save yourself time so that we know how you write, so that you don't have to ask them every single time. A lot of the customization that is in mine talks about my target audience, talks about the things that are really important to me, like taking action, being proactive. I cue that all up, and that right there is going to save me a ton of time, and everything is going to be filtered through that lens from there on out. So customize your LLM, whichever one it is, or multiples, and build out that profile. And you can do that. It will not take you long. If it takes you more than 20 minutes, call me.
I was going to say, get some help. Oh my gosh. Amazing advice. Loren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on AI, Voice or Victim. If you want to stay competitive in the AI age, start now. Take one insight from today's episode and put it into practice in the next 24 hours. Make sure to follow us, share your thoughts, and subscribe for more actionable AI insights. See you next time.